We've now been travelling Australia for close to 3 years, and in this video we're going to have a look at what it cost us as a family of 4 to travel Australia. Just the other week we met a family camping and they were planning their lap, so I asked them what were they budgeting for their lap, and they said they were expecting it to cost them around 50 grand. That number of 50 grand a year or 1k a week is still something that I'm seeing getting thrown out there a lot in the travelling forums, and having just looked at our expenses for the last year, I can tell you for sure that for us as a family of 4, it's costing us significantly more than that. I feel like that 50 grand a year, 1k a week number is seriously out of date. And it's my hope that by sharing with you guys what it cost us to travel around Australia last year, we can give you a much more realistic idea of what it's going to cost you if you're planning your lap. We keep every receipt for every expense that we have while traveling around Australia, and then we put it onto a spreadsheet. It's a pretty annoying task to do, and to be honest, the only reason that it gets done is my beautiful wife Mel does it, so you should probably be thanking her for this video. But it is a pretty invaluable thing to do, and I'm really glad that we do it. Every year we have a look back at what we've been spending our money on, and we try and assess if there's anything we can do to improve. And by doing this process and then sharing it here on our channel, not only are we able to help ourselves, but hopefully we're also able to help you guys too. So let's start working through our expenses from 2023, starting with our biggest expense, food. In 2023, our food bill was $21,147, averaging out at $407 a week. In 2022, we spent $19,800, and in 2021, we spent $15,944. As you can see, the cost of living increases that everyone is dealing with is certainly still hitting us out here on the road. The cost of groceries has gone up significantly since we got on the road. It's absolutely ludicrous these days. I walk into the shops and get a packet of corn chips and it's $7. But food is an expense you already have living in a home, and you're probably not going to drastically change the way you eat when you move into a caravan, so you can expect this expense to remain about the same. But I do have a few tips that I can share with you to help you cut your food costs while you're on the road. Where you shop at can have a big impact on how much your groceries will cost. In small and remote towns, the price of groceries skyrockets, so don't be afraid to spend a lot and stock up before you head out remote. And on that note, another tip that I have is to purchase a vacuum sealer. We vacuum seal all of our meats when we're doing big shops. Not only does it make the meat last longer, it also packs it down smaller so that you can fit it into your small little caravan fridge. Alright, moving on to our next expense, accommodation. In 2023, we spent $9,059 on accommodation, averaging out at $170 a week. In 2022, we spent $6,833, and in 2021, we spent $12,806. Where you're traveling can have a big impact on your accommodation costs. We found the most expensive places in Australia to travel are the east and west coasts of Australia, and as we spent a lot of 2023 traveling down the West Australian coast, that's why last year's accommodation costs were a bit higher for us. Also, in 21, we were travelling around the east coast of Australia, whilst in 22 we spent a lot of time in inland Australia and down in South Australia, which is why that was our cheapest year. Another thing to keep in mind is the season that you're travelling in. Most paid campgrounds and caravan parks are going to increase their rates during the busy seasons. And then don't even get me started on the silly seasons and holidays. I actually saw this year at Christmas some caravan parks on the east coast of Australia charging $150 a night. It's getting absolutely ludicrous. So that's why during the silly seasons, generally we'll try and avoid the capital cities and try and head out remote where the prices are much more reasonable. Also, if you've got kids, you can expect your accommodation costs to be higher. Most caravan parks are going to be charging you an extra $5, $10, even $15 per child. Even some bush camps are now starting to charge per child, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to us. We call it the parent tax. All they provide for you at a bush camp is a patch of dirt. And by having a kid, you're not taking up any extra space. In fact, for us in our little 18-foot caravan, we take up less space than most couples. So, yeah, we call it the parent tax, and it really grinds our gears when they charge for kids at these bush camps. Alright, moving on to our next expense, fuel. In 2023, our fuel bill was $9,936, averaging out at $191 a week. In 2022, our fuel bill was $11,064, and in 2021, our fuel bill was $6,650. Fuel is a bit of a necessary evil. You can't really avoid it. You're going to be spending money on fuel while you're traveling Australia. When we first started traveling in 2021, fuel was averaging around $1.30 per litre, but in 2022 it's skyrocketed right up to around $2.10 a litre, and in 23 it hasn't really changed too much from there, and that's why our fuel bill is similar to last year. But the thing with fuel is it's not going to be the same for everyone. It's going to depend on how big your rig is and how fast you're travelling. We aren't travelling like a traditional lapper, we're travelling a lot slower, so if you're planning your lap, you're probably going to be travelling a lot faster than us, so you might expect a bigger fuel bill because of that. Also, we're definitely on the smaller side of caravan rigs. It costs us around 18 litres per 100 kilometres to get around, but I've met people that tell me it costs them around 30 litres per 100 kilometres with their big rigs. So your fuel consumption rate is something that you also need to factor into your estimates for what your fuel bill is going to be. Alright, moving on to the next one. Maintenance, repairs, upgrades and consumables.
Nice.
In 2023, this bill was $17,713 for us. In 2022, this bill was $6,212, and in 2021, the bill was $12,307. Yeah, 2023 was a rough year for us for maintenance and repairs. We had a lot of things go wrong for us. Repairs is one of those things that you can't really prepare for. One thing I can say though is travelling Australia and towing a caravan is going to be hard on your gear, especially if you're going to try and do some of the more adventurous things like the Gibb River Road or Cape York. Let me explain what blew out our budget on repairs this year. When we did the Gibb, we blew up our starter motor, we also snapped our drive shaft, and that was a very expensive repair bill, and we also had a few other minor car repair issues as well. We had to replace our drive belt tensioner pulley and our radiator clutch fan, so we had a pretty expensive year for car repair bills. Also, we've had to replace 2 different cameras to keep this YouTube channel running, as we've had a couple of cameras break. And lastly, we've now been on the road for 3 years, and a bunch of our stuff is just starting to get old and break on us. We had to replace our step, our silage hose, a lot of our fittings are starting to break, so we've just been spending a lot more on repairs this year. So with all of those repairs and replacements, along with our routine expenses like services, we've just had a really expensive year in this department. Okay, moving on. Bills. In 2023, we spent $7,998 on bills. In 2022, we spent $8,306, and in 2021, we spent $10,380. So bills on the road include things like van, car, boat, regos and insurances. We've got RACQ Ultra Care, and that absolutely paid for itself this year. Our cars had to go on a flatbed twice this year, and the RACQ Ultra Care covered the tow, and they've even paid for a hire car for us. On top of that, our coverage would cover a tow of the van if that was needed as well. It's a really nice thing to have. Other things that fall into this category are things like income and life insurances, phone bills, internet bills. We've got a few subscription services like Disney Plus, a few for my editing software. There's not much more to say on this subject. Unfortunately, everybody's got bills and they don't all go away when you move into a caravan. Medical. In 2023, our medical bills were $5,520. In 2022, our bill was $7,980, and in 2021, our bill was $734. Under normal circumstances, medical wouldn't have its own subject header for us, but Kaylee's still undergoing her dental treatment, so our medical bills were quite expensive this year, and if I just put those expenses under miscellaneous, it kind of skews the data too much, which is why it has its own subject. However, that being said, maybe you've got your own medical issues that you'll have to deal with on the road, so it's worth giving this subject a bit of consideration. Alcohol. In 2023, our alcohol bill was $3,796. In 2022, our alcohol bill was $2,855, and in 2021, our alcohol bill was $4,971. Okay, so if you've been following us along for this whole year, you might remember that for the first 6 months of 2023, I didn't drink. So I'm a little bit perplexed as to how our alcohol bill last year was more expensive than the year before.
I did a lot of socializing. There'll be less socializing in 2024.
That's true. We did meet some really cool people this year and did a bit more socializing than usual. Look, all I can say is that when you first get on the road, you're going to be way out of routine. Every day is going to feel like a weekend. So you should probably plan and prepare for your alcohol expenses to be a little bit higher than you're used to. Activities. In 2023, we spent $1,900 on activities. In 2022, we spent $2,566, and in 2021, we spent $2,513 on activities. Our philosophy on activities has evolved over our time on the road. When we first hit the road, we used to do a ton of little activities, but now we just try and do 1 or 2 big things a year. Luckily for us, just camping and being in nature is enough to keep us happy. We tend to focus on free activities like fishing, going to the beach, or going on walks, rather than expensive tours. Activities and tours is one of those things that can really blow out your budget. So if you're planning to do a lap and you're planning to do a lot of those big ticket activities like swimming with whale sharks, going out to the horizontal falls, for example, helicopter flights, you should probably prepare for your activities bill to be significantly higher than ours. The last expense on our spreadsheet is miscellaneous. In 2023, this bill for us was $10,300. In 2022, this bill was $10,928, and in 2021, this bill was $7,547. Miscellaneous items includes things that didn't really fit into any of the above categories. There's things like clothes, posting, stationery, haircuts. These sort of things that didn't really fit into the categories above but didn't really warrant having their own category. Alright, we've made it to the end, to the totals. How much does it cost us to travel Australia for a year? So, in 2023, it cost us $87,370 to travel Australia for a year full time. That averages out at $1,680 per week. In 2022, it cost us $78,210, and in 2021, it cost us $73,850. As you can see, that's significantly more than that age-old adage of 50 grand a year or 1k a week. The other thing that I'll say is we're far more budget conscious than your average travelling lapper. We've got a pretty small rig, we don't travel very fast, we don't eat out very often, we don't do a lot of tours, and we look for budget accommodation wherever possible. If you're someone who's planning a big lap and you're planning to travel fast, do a lot of activities and tours, eat out a lot, drink a lot, stay in caravan parks, I think you could pretty easily expect your budget to be more like $100,000 to $120,000, and to be honest, it would be pretty damn easy to go even higher than that. I hope this video has given you some insights into what it really costs to travel Australia full-time in a caravan. If you enjoyed the video or you got something out of it, please hit that like button. We also put out a weekly vlog sharing our adventures around Australia, where we also share a ton of neat tips and tricks about this lifestyle. So please subscribe, and maybe you can go and check out some of our vlogs. Thanks for watching. YouTube thinks you might like this video here. Click the thumbnail, the arrow is pointing it. You could also subscribe by clicking the Trippin logo.